Thanks for tuning in to That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Brought to you by Friedman International, the international campaign experts taking the pain out of your multi-market campaigns. Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Yes, I'm back from the heat of the south of France, not complaining about it at all, but I am sharing with you some of the episodes I was able to record while I was there at the Festival of Creativity, and really grateful that I was able to be there with thanks to Friedman International, such a wonderful partnership that we have with Friedman International. Today's guest is Emma Robinson, who is Head of Enterprise Brand across B2B and global markets at Canva. So as many of you know, I've talked about Canva before. I'm a bit of a fan. Emma joined Canva a year ago after an impressive 5-year run at ThoughtSpot, and she's the company's first global leader focused on marketing to large organizations. So Canva obviously have a huge focus on not just, one-to-one users and small, medium businesses, but now enterprise is a huge part of what they're doing. So we're going to talk about, the growth of Canva, her view on how she's thinking about the global marketing, enterprise marketing. It's a different muscle for an organization, so how she is approaching that. Again, as I said, global marketing being a huge thing, how she thinks about the balance of global local. Of course, that is where the likes of Friedman International come right in and help you take the pain out of your international marketing campaigns. Emma's spearheaded Canva's transition into enterprise level creativity, strengthening content, AI-driven workflows, and brand trust across global marketing. So it is really fascinating conversation with Emma. Great to hear from somebody who is, at almost that starting point of this journey for Canva, and they are on an incredible journey and growth path. And I do talk about my use of Canva in the episode. If you're enjoying That's What I Call Marketing, please do rate, review, share, subscribe these episodes. It really does help us in terms of reaching new people, and we love all our new listeners and our old listeners. Not saying people are old, I'm old. So listen, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get right into it with Emma Robinson of Canva. Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Yes, I'm back from the heat of the south of France, not complaining about it at all, but I am... Well, listen, thanks for joining me. That's What I Call Marketing. As I was saying to you before we started, and I will totally rein it in, but massive Canva fan. I was talking to Jimmy Knowles last year here at Canva about Canva, about the product, about how I use it every single day, and it's just been... I think given me, and this is what I think Canva does brilliantly, the tools to do things that you needed design teams almost to do, and now I can get the stuff I need.
Yeah,
huge fan. That's my rein. That's it. I'm going to rein it in after this.
No, we love that, and actually it's great. I mean, you're a one-man band. You're able to do a lot of this podcasting and video features by yourself. So we love that. Thank you for being a very loyal and happy user.
Yeah.
One of many. Our community is huge, and we love them, and they give us all the best product advice and all the things that we need to go build for. So thank you for that, and I'm glad that you're having a good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, listen, tell me a bit about your path to your current role in Canva.
Yeah, so I actually would probably call myself a technologist of sorts. Maybe not so much with the whole AI explosion and the disruption there. I'm still learning. But I definitely started my life or my career in technology. I worked in the UK on point of sale systems for Marks and Spencer way back in the day. And then I kind of fell in love with technology, just more what it could do for users and for communities and for customers. I moved into more of development and testing tools, and then found my path actually through that to product marketing.
Okay.
Which was incredibly insightful to be able to kind of take that core messaging that you would typically land with customers and users, but then do it in a way that, had the technology at the core still, but also be able to have a layer of creativity. So I spent some time in product marketing and then moved into more of the demand gen functions over the years. I was very early at Salesforce, which was an incredible experience. I was at Google Cloud before it was even really Google Cloud.
Okay.
I think there was a few marketers on that product line for a while. And so, really great journey. I live in the Bay Area, so of course I have been at some startups as well,
Okay.
one successfully IPOing. And so that led my career here at Canva. And look, we talked about it, but the one thing that I think is very important when you decide on the companies that you want to go work for, is being able to be in love with the product. And truly, truly see it have product market fit. And often as a marketer, that's the best thing that you can do, because then you can tell like really great, beautiful stories with a lot of like heart and emotion.
Yeah.
And that is a place that Canva is a place I can do that in spades. So
No, it's such a great product. And I mean, there's only so much marketing you can do for bad products.
100%. I agree with you.
You're like, oh, this is a goodish product. Like, it doesn't write itself, but Canva does write itself. So tell me a bit about maybe how that journey, like what happened to get you to Canva. Like, were you just want to reach out to you? Were you using the product? Tell me a bit about how that that happened.
No, I was using the product, and I think, I'd been at my previous company for some years, so for 5 years, and I think you ultimately see AI as a disruption that's coming, and there are certain products that will be disrupted because of it. And the previous company I was in, at data and analytics, it does, it's one of those evolving fields, but AI will help it sort of augment to more capabilities. But also, it was a time, I think, where it was the market was catching up so fast, and so product teams are really trying to have to get ahead of that curve. And so I think what was more interesting is to go and find a place that had almost cracked that. So really had cracked the AI and how you build AI into core capabilities in product. And I felt like Canva, after a lot of research, had really done that. So that was kind of one layer, going back to my technology roots.
Right.
The second layer of that was around obviously the culture of a company. You want to be able to go somewhere where, you're going to do hard work in every company, but doing it with great humans, with a good spirit, is really foundational. And then I'm not sure if you know the sort of founding premise and mission of Canva, but Mel and Cliff and Cam, as our three co-founders, really deliver on this sort of mission every day, this like idea to empower the world to design.
Yeah.
And it's so prolific in that it comes through in every single facet of what we do, that I think just was incredibly high impact for me, and really made me very passionate about wanting to join Canva. And then also the brand is very colorful and fun.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Very
isn't
unapologetically fun and creative. And as a marketer, who doesn't want to work in a company that celebrates that and empowerment for users? So all of those things combined just meant there was a lot of checks and boxes, and I was very happy to join them. I've been only there for just over a year now, but it's been terrific.
Were you there when they launched the enterprise product at Canva?
Yes,
the
my first week.
The rap battle, was that your first week?
It was my first week,
oh my God. I've talked about it on the podcast. I absolutely adored that. It was crazy, but brilliant. And the point I made, some people are giving out, as people do, right? I was like, you don't hear people talk about a B2B or an enterprise product solution outside of maybe, a Reddit thread or something. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Everyone was talking about it. So I did love that.
I did love that. I think you have to push the edges on brands sometimes. And what was really nice about that story was that the actual rapper himself was actually one of our community members.
Yeah.
So we felt like there was a lot of heart in that. It was an expression. And I think like the funnest time when you were sitting in the audience, I mean, I was sitting next to a gentleman who will remain nameless, but was from a very, Fortune 500 Wall Street financial services institution, and he was sitting in his suit, his tie, and all I could see was his little knee jumping up and down and a little click of the hand. I mean, that to me shows that, our job is to compel people, it's to convict people, it's to empower them and find emotion. And with that particular example, like, I just felt like, oh, we really have cracked this. Like, people who, really are just absolutely embracing this. And so that was a really nice thing.
And like in B2B marketing, a lot of B2B marketing is incredibly boring, right? And, there's no other way of saying it.
It can be. There are some sexy brands out
there
there.
There are some doing it, but like 9 times out of 10, it's boring because we forget to make human connections with the humans who are the users. I don't know why. You've probably seen that, and we're not going to call out any brands that have done it or are doing it, but have you any thoughts on why did that happen? Why do we start going, oh, well, we're talking to this person, we need to give them all the product and feature information and forget that they're a human being that, enjoys music and, sport.
No, totally. I mean, I think, look, ultimately, these lines between B2B and B2C are blurring, right? You sort of go to work as a user, and we talk about we just all users of products. And so however that manifests, I think the thing with B2B, and you kind of hit this on the head here, Conor, Like the idea of some of these products are so complex.
Yeah.
And all you want to do is unveil all of the things that, are very important features in your product and all of the suite of tools that you have, and often there's many of them.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like beauty is in simplicity and they overcomplicate things. So I think that's kind of the hard thing that I've seen. And then I think, now we have to think about the channels, right? I mean,
Yes.
the world is
Yes,
changing.
exactly.
We
Yeah.
have more Gen Z and millennial buyers now than there ever were before. 76% of them start with video. They go on a self-service journey. It is not about contacting a sales rep anymore in B2B. It's really about how you find the right paths to discover a product. So with that, it's sort of a landscape change. You really need to back into that with how do you make these things more viral and fun, and how can you put them on platforms that are maybe TikTok and Instagram and other channels and platforms that might be different, and then how do you create the content for those channels to really show up in the right way, in an authentic way for that particular medium. And so for B2B marketers, and I think that is a bigger shift. I think AI is obviously really making that accelerated. So you have to kind of take a step back and like, would this resonate with me as a consumer of life?
Exactly.
I'm a human in the world. Like, does this motivate and compel me? And I think as we look at the example of the wrap they use for Canva Create, I mean, I think in a lot of ways that connected with a lot of people. And our buyers and marketers and creatives, they're fun and interesting, and they want to experience these things and be deeply moved. And so that was a good example of that. And equally, I think we got something like 50 million impressions, engagements on the channels. So it's the human element, but it's also like, it actually is performant too. And will drive ultimately, conversions and some of those other metrics. But, you have to find new paths. And I think that's the disruption that B2B marketing is seeing today.
And how do you think then about the audience that you're communicating with? How do you break that down? Because you said there, and I've heard this before in enterprise, sometimes you think about the C-suite, right? But they may not be the person that is bringing the product into the business. So they might be the final decision maker on the budget, but they may not be the person that says, oh, I've discovered this amazing new product. So how do you think about your marketing?
That's a great question. And look, ultimately, I think we look at it, if you have a content creation need and you have goals that are associated with those content creation needs, then you're ultimately the type of person that would like to buy Canva or could buy Canva, engage with Canva, and Canva can help you in that content creation process. So that really is a massively wide, total addressable market, is call it a TAM. That's a huge TAM. So I think for us, it's about finding and outlining the right use cases that people can really interact with, can and easily adopt, can sort of start with Canva, start getting value, and then move on. So the way that manifests is you typically see marketing, creative teams, maybe sales teams that work very closely on content creation needs. It shows up in PR and comms, internal communications, in many different functional areas, but they're the primary ones where we would focus. So a lot of it is really trying to create the right content messaging that serves those audiences, looks at those segmentations. And then we do a lot of test and learn. I mean, it's really terrific to be able to have a product like Canva with all the platform capabilities around AI to be able to quickly spin up like tests, whether it be ad copy creation, creative in itself, like anything that we're doing, the full funnel, we can get out to market very quickly, get the volume, and then get quality from that volume, meaning we can test a bunch of variations and quickly understand what's working for a particular audience, for a particular kind of micro audience as well.
I love the test and learn. I was lucky enough, I worked on a team, but it was a good while ago now, and I think the opportunities for test and learn now are so different. But we were doing that. We were trying to figure out what are the things that were resonating. We were small business owners we were going after with Indeed, and trying to figure out what were the things that would resonate them. And we would test it in one market or one part of a market, and then whatever was resonating, we would then try scale that, or we'd kill things that weren't working. Right. Have you found things that you've kind of gone, oh, we thought that would work, and we're gonna kill it now, or things that you've been able to scale that have surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of the things that don't seem to resonate as much these days are some of those like traditional B2B content pieces. So maybe it's like a white paper, we've changed a lot of what we do with the way that people interact with visualizations and how we tell data stories. Like marketers in general, we're not just creative humans, we're actually, very deeply passionate about how do we make data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
So I think what we've seen a lot of is, it being able, like we have this product, for example, called Flourish, which helps us to do data visualization and storytelling at scale. It's incredible. Oh my gosh. Props to the product. But it's part of the Canva family, and we basically are able to see, or put those types of things into reports that we know resonates so much more deeply, compels people in a different way when it is so interesting. And you're not just looking at flat file text, you're actually looking at like really interesting data. And I think that's where you get the spark of interest from things as we put thought leadership content out into the world. So that's an example of things that we've been testing. And even your point on the Canva Create Wrap, those types of things. And even this year, I'm not sure if you saw the musical. But, it's just, you test a variety of different things. And look, at the end of the day, if they don't quite work, they don't quite resonate, you move on. And digital in particular is really good for that. You're able to scale across multiple platforms. If something's not working, we just move on. So.
And culture, I think, is really important for that as well, because like a culture where there's a fear of retribution or whatever, if you get it wrong, that's so important to create that kind of, we're going to try this.
Yeah.
We're establishing the right framework to understand our hypothesis, what we will want to measure, what decision we'll make if it works or doesn't work, and then if it does fail, we'd have that framework to know what went wrong and make good decisions.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of leaders, generally when you put the budgets together for these things, you're always carving out a good 10%, 5-10% for just pure experiments.
Yeah.
So you're doing all your core, that there's going to be some big bets, some, big moments you need to go deliver for the market and for the brands, but ultimately you can find a pocket of budget. And I think AI actually is really helping us with that.
Yeah.
It's very clearly an area that we can carve off where we're sort of looking at the right use cases, we're benchmarking the performance and then running campaigns, activations, content that then allows us to look at the improvements that we've made, or maybe not.
Yeah.
That you can do incredibly powerfully, even using Canva, but that will help you to kind of really understand what can work and what can't at a very fast pace and scale.
Yeah, and AI, obviously, so there's huge amounts of AI in the Canva product, but then outside of Canva, how are you working with AI kind of in your day-to-day? I did hear someone on the panel say that she heard a friend like in a finance role saying, I put all the company's financials up to see what ChatGPT and it's like, no.
Not smart. Don't do that, anyone. Don't do that. No, we are very particular about that. So we do have enterprise licenses, paid business licenses for the majority of the LLMs. We work with a couple in particular, and OpenAI and Anthropic. And so we would make sure that they are available for users in the company. And to be honest, we're very transparent about what we want people to do and very intentional.
Right.
So we do want people to embrace these tools. And even from our founders level all the way through the organization, it's very much a cultural mindset of you have to, to develop craft and understand how these things can help you in your current day-to-day. You need to invest in your own skills development. So there is a lot of, I would say, sort of the top down, that we're providing the right tools for people to be able to go learn. And that is a lot of prompting, it's a lot of custom, GPT build or custom GPT building. We're doing a lot of that type of thing. And then also using Canva itself as more of a consolidated platform, which we have, a number of tools there, which are helping marketing across all the processes. So whether that's with social media, with video, with any ad campaign creation, all the way through to even the process of content creation. So like whiteboarding, we're all in whiteboards. We're using, magic sort to like sort all the sticky notes into buckets and create the brief. And, these things, it's kind of like we all laugh about them, but actually there's so much opportunity in the cracks that go between handoff processes in creative, especially if you're working with external creative teams. These things can take 2 or 3 weeks just to get briefings done. This is a way to speed up. I think we were looking at one of the last campaigns we ran. It was like a 3-day briefing process with a creative team for a big campaign versus more of a 2-week. So it's like we're really finding a lot of efficiency gains there. So we're using those tools. And then I think, I run a full stack funnel across the demand gen engine. We're also looking at core capabilities to do things like, enrich data, for example, to make sure we are able to do personalization at scale. Okay. We have an email platform in Braze that we're trying to also use their AI features to sort of look at, next week's action and things like that. We look at Clay for doing enrichment. And then there's a bunch of other things that we're looking at, just more, I would say, slightly more point solutions to help us with some of the challenges that we're having on the funnel. And then even with customer references, we have a product that we're able to sort of look through all the calls the sales folks are doing and sort of scrape, like where someone mentions Canva in a positive way, we can sort of pull that out, scrape it out, and add it to a repository and start building our advocacy and our evangelists up sort of that way. So there's a lot of, like I say, I think a lot of it is in the points of handoff or the points of sort of prescription that actually the biggest opportunity gaps are, or like opportunities are to be able to go close those gaps.
And how then are you seeing, so that's kind of AI from internally and kind of using it to be better and more efficient. Are you seeing AI having an impact on even the way people find Canva? So we've seen it where, you know, the way people are searching has changed. I think that's going to fundamentally change in the next 12 months, you know, the use of agents. And are you seeing that yet, or do you have kind of a view on it?
It's interesting. I was sitting with the SEO team the other day on web traffic, and we've not seen any degradation yet, which surprised me a little.
Are you sure? Turn that upside down.
I know. I mean, their data's solid, so I don't know. But I'm sure it will come. So I think the point on that is that, you know, you will find people going to LLMs to do their search, their core search, or even to YouTube, to be very honest. And many other places, like it'll be conversational, voice activated, all those things. I would just say that we have to really, this is a disruptive space, like we have to keep an eye on it. It is about what you do with content, like how you position the right content to be able to get the LLMs in general to learn, so you are featured. And then it goes back to the point I made when we first started talking, which is this journey. This journey is now no longer on your website so much, right? You're actually going to be in places like G2 where you're doing user reviews much quicker. You're going to be in custom demos that will accelerate that sort of sales process. There's going to be a lot of really good improvements, I think, in terms of educating and ensuring that as the customers go through this journey, that they're actually very well able to make a decision earlier on, or like, you know, we'll reduce that sort of early stage sales cycle somewhat. So that's one thing that we're definitely looking at. But in terms of just sort of how people will search, yes, 100%. We're doing a lot of investments in our YouTube channel, for example. The website is still a core driver of growth for us, for sure. But we are starting to look at other ways that we can append that with our new programs.
And is it still, sorry, because you're just touching the website as a channel for growth. Obviously, I pay for my license. I started with the free and then was like, oh, there's so much more I can unlock by paying not a huge amount every year. Is product-led growth still a big strategy for Canva, bringing people in, try the product and convert that way?
I mean, of course. I think it will never go away. It's a great product to have in a PLG motion. It's like served us well in the terms of the growth we've had over the last decade or so. I think what's nice is that we're able to have a parallel path now too with our sales-led motion. And actually, a lot of it was, you know, you mentioned sort of CMOs earlier. What actually you see is a lot of users that are using the product that are very excited in their consumer lives. They take it to work. Or they're generational, so they're students, they're from university, from K through 12, and they come through the Canva ecosystem, and this is the tool they just assume everybody's using, which is amazing. So they come in, and then they come into the workplace, and then we're starting to see a groundswell of just so much like appetite and love for using the product. And then I think very quickly, marketing leaders are now started kind of seeing that, so they get this sort of bottoms up from their teams, and a lot of people are saying, actually, I don't want to go work at this company unless you have Canva. Like, it becomes like that, right? It's really fascinating. So yeah, you do see that. I think that's like it's like a top down and a bottoms up. And then the direct sales motion, of course, will be a good place for us to, as we engage with more complex sales cycles, with more complex requirements of customers. There's a lot of intricacy that comes with selling to a large Fortune 500 in terms of, you know, decision making and, you know, the right committees on that, how you govern, how you provide security. Those are very legitimate concerns that you need to address, and us as marketers need to have a really good sort of education and storytelling around. Yes, direct sales will be as important as PLG. I think all of it matters, and it's really about where you can get growth. And organic growth. And if you see these enterprises wanting to do wall-to-wall Canva licenses, then that's terrific.
Bring it on.
I'm okay with that.
When you think then about building that enterprise motion, sales, everything. There's a whole shift that's required, because I think a business that is maybe product-led growth or small to medium business, the shift to enterprise is quite significant. You need different types of skills, different types of salespeople, different marketing skills. How's that journey been? Because I'm sure it's been part of your journey in the past year.
Yes, it has indeed. Yeah, look, I mean, I think, setting up an enterprise function, by the way, is the funnest thing you'll ever, well, I have ever done and will do. So yeah, it is a lot about, do we have the right skills to be able to have these very complex, in-depth conversations with buyers that have these set of needs that are very different. And so there's a skills, sort of assessment. There's like a profile building that you would need to do to get the right salespeople in. And maybe they're more value-based sales reps versus kind of your more highly transactional kind of get on the phone kind of folks. So yes, there's been one part of it. And then I think like what we're looking at is we still have to change this perception of Canva. So it's not all about, consumer roots are very important and it's helped us to get this momentum, but we do want to show up as a credible, robust enterprise-grade platform for businesses to actually feel like they can use with all their employees. Yeah. So making that leap and just that change, it has a set of requirements that are very different. You engage more of the analyst community, for example. We're doing a lot more, I guess, content that's a lot deeper and more, it goes into a lot of the security and compliance issues.
Yeah.
The things that people really care about. So there is a set of requirements that are different in your marketing content. And so we have the perception change, we have the demand gen engine, so that really requires us to build a whole funnel at scale, so have a lot of multi-channel, be able to have, again, like that right content to fuel those channels. And then the other piece that's really important actually is the customer, like just having customer advocacy and be able to protect some of those sort of more like the retention rates that you see in SaaS environments. What we don't want to do is sort of, sell the product in and people don't adopt it or not switch it on. So we're helping customers to really realize the value early. So putting them onto things like the brand kits, getting them into a enterprise license and set up properly, enabled, trained for success. And then that really helps us to provide stickiness in the product. And then a lot of the work we do, for example, with our design school is to educate and train people, quite frankly, on these processes and these new features within the tool set, which allows us to get that adoption high. Because we have there's so many doc types now in the Visual Suite. So it is really great to be able to show people that. A lot of people think we're just about designs, for example, or we're just about maybe social media content and video. But actually we have a really great whiteboarding feature. There's a website.
I know.
There's a lot of great stuff.
I tell you my website story?
No, tell me.
So I had a website with Wix, and I can name them, you can. So I had a website with Wix, and the cost of it went like up 4 times. So I had it like obviously at a 2-year price. They came back and said, this is your renewal. I was like, that's ridiculous. It's gone up 4 times of what I was paying. I went back to them. I was like, can you do anything here? Happy to continue using you. They're like, no. And then I was like, oh, Canva can do websites now. So I went on to Canva, and I had my domain, and honestly, in 5 minutes, had a site live.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. So I would say, just also, whilst we're on amazing things, check out Canva Code.
I have to.
Oh,
I know.
Okay.
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, please
it's on my
do.
list to
Please do. Give it a really difficult prompt and see what comes out in 3 minutes. Your eyes will light up and your jaw may be on the floor for a little bit. No, it's really great. We looked at a Create this year, and I think the first time we all saw it, we were all a bit like, wait, it does what? Like how? Because like I say, when I started this, I come from a world of technology from 25 years ago, which was, you're spending hours and weeks and months on building very complex software programs to be able to support the needs of users. And these projects are 2 to 3 years. Now you're doing that in 3 minutes? It's just insane to me.
Isn't it? Like,
it's
one that's exciting.
It makes me feel like I warrant my grey hair.
I don't know what I warrant. Stay to me. When you're doing the enterprise marketing, I just wanted to ask you kind of about two other things. One is what are the signals you're looking for to know that you're on the right track, or what are the kind of the KPIs you care deeply about, that you're always onto your team about?
Yeah. Oh my
God. In a nice way,
my world, a lot of it is around pipeline generation, and that was, we talked about the direct sales motion. So that is something that I think we are very focused on. But what I would say is that it's about creating the pipeline for here and now to hit the number for the company for the year, and that's based on an annual operating plan. but it's also about actually doing that in a durable way. So what we want to do is build like long-term brand equity, and we do that through those things we talked about with the perception change first and foremost. But you actually also need to make sure that it is just, you're building leads for the future. So a lot of investment in brand is really that lead generation, and you're getting engagements. You can retarget these people. Like, there's a lot of sort of upper funnel work that is done that does support that pipeline motion.
Yeah.
So that's just more of an education. But yes, ultimately, it is about the right leads and the right pipeline and the shape of that pipeline. So that does it have durability and growth? Is it for accounts that may take longer to form and to close? Or is it accounts like in our mid-market, for example, that may close a lot quicker?
So you're looking like at a 60, 90 day or like how do you kind of...
Yeah, so we have a few sales segments, and there's a sort of small business, there's a commercial type of business model which has a certain threshold of employee sizes, and then it goes up from there. And the final sort of tiering is our strategic tier, which is the 2,000 employees and above. It's the Walmarts, the Zooms, the Salesforces of the world. So yeah, that's how we structure it. And then of course we have goals based on delivering against those segments. And then the final piece, which I think is in some ways as important as the pipeline piece, and that's, are the customers happy, successful, using the product, adopting, and then if we see growth there, that can fuel the top end as well.
Okay.
So net new logos is important, but I would say
active users within those.
Users, yes, exactly. Yeah. And doing some of the right things too. You want customers to not just use one dog type. You want them to be able to string these things together and actually understand that use cases, entire content processes can be actually used in, you can implement those into Canva. And a lot of people maybe just think as like individual doc types, or they want to do, background removing or work on just a particular image generation, and which is great too. And actually creating a new background is even more fun.
Yeah.
You can have multiple shirt colors, which in Canva we need because it's so hot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that's some of the things that we're definitely looking at in the enterprise.
And how then do you think about one of the big challenges for any global company is that global, local, getting the right messaging to the right country in the right way, but also then not getting, not confused, but, finding the right things to really worry about in terms of localization, because it is, obviously huge global ambitions, but it's a little bit easier, Australia, UK, US, Canada, but then when you go to France and Germany, it's wildly different, right?
100%. Yeah. No, it is. And I think we were in 190 countries, I think now, maybe.
Dead easy then, yeah.
So easy. Gosh. But no, I would say that is a very good point. I, having been in a few countries in a few different roles, this is something that I take very passionately, like localization with the right, set of content that compels people in a local market is so incredibly important. We've done a lot of things with, I would say, local influencers, the local community in those markets, to be able to give us the right inputs for what would work and resonate in those markets. For example, actually, just this week, we've launched an amazing out-of-home campaign when you're back.
I saw it.
Oh, you did see it?
I
Okay,
saw it
great.
online.
Okay, wonderful. It's so fun and so creative. But look, that's the type of thing that will deeply resonate with a local market in the UK. We've seen examples where other things maybe don't resonate as much in a UK market. And I can probably share one example. It's more around, so we had a campaign, a brand campaign called Love Your Work.
Yes.
And the idea is to celebrate people who are doing great things at work, and teams who use Canva generally get very empowered and excited. And it's like this feeling of like loving your work, like we're done.
Yeah.
But if you think about the UK and sort of just the framing of maybe the mindset, the cultural nuances there, that's something like most British people don't really talk about, like, oh, I really love my work. Gosh, I'm so excited. But, it's just not like something in the DNA, perhaps.
Yes.
And so anyways, there's an interesting nuance, but it's an important one, because to roll that campaign out the size of Canva, you're looking at, probably a few $1 million.
Yes.
And you don't want to make those types of mistakes. So I think having local brand teams, having local teams in market that can give you some of these, requirements and can translate what will work and what won't, that really is very helpful. And I think as we build into more of the markets, like, certainly into Africa and then over into Southeast Asia, for example, those things really matter. And in particular in Japan, I would say.
Japan so
is
different, isn't it?
Market.
Yeah.
It's so fun. We take a lot of liberties with our brand and creative, I think, in those markets, just because it's like, you want it to resonate. And if it doesn't, then it's a poor use of your budget and your dollars. Finding the thing that works for the community is incredibly important.
There was a huge, again, when I was in Indeed, there was a huge kind of I guess, challenge in a good way, people kind of pushing and saying that won't work here. But where we had to get to was a better conversation around that, and even like, well, what do you like about the work? What will work? And try find, because I think it's easy. If you say to people, someone like, what will this work in your market? The first thing they do is look for a way to say, well, that probably won't work, so I can add something to it. But like that wildly different work in Japan and also Germany.
Yes.
Really different work.
Yes.
Really interesting.
100%. No, and so that is the good unlock for us, I guess, in that regard is having those local marketers in region who can really help us. And then I think the other piece of it is that you want your content to be localized in all languages. And so some of that is very challenging.
Yeah.
And then we do have a lot of tooling that allows us to do that in Canva. So our sort of translation capabilities, which helps with things like headline copy, but brings in those local nuances. And a human will always validate those things.
Yeah.
But like it will get us 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
And so from an efficiency point of view and able to like work with those local markets, it's like a good double whammy.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking time. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. And, it's going to be exciting to see the growth of Canva. It's a wonderful journey and a wonderful
blessed.
company. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Conor.
Thanks a million.
Speak to you.
Cheers.
Have a good one.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Corel. You could probably see in here where we had to cut due to the overheating issue that we had, but really fascinating episode. I really enjoyed Corel's perspective on where we're going in terms of the technology, his view on attention. Again, that's something we've shared a number of times on this podcast with the wonderful Karen Nelson-Field, and how we can think about global marketing and, of course, how we can help ensure that we have better inclusion within our marketing organizations and the work that we do. That is it for today's episode. Of course, thanks again to Friedman International for their support of this series. If you were thinking about global marketing, even if you're only starting to think about how you might get to that global marketing approach, structure, setup, Friedman International are there to help you think about that and take the pain out of your international campaigns. So for me, your host, Conor Byrne, until the next episode, thanks so much for tuning in. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to That's What I Call Marketing, the Can Sessions. Brought to you by Friedman International, the international campaign experts taking the pain out of your multi-market campaigns.